forget to do that. So good luck.
Thank you, Sadie.
Just wait. Okay. Right. Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? Okay. Can I see any thumbs up from people? And everyone's got their cameras off. Nikki Fisher, can you hear me?
I can.
Hooray! We are live. How exciting. Thanks, Nikki. You were my guinea pig. So, good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome on this frosty morning to the first RISE webinar of 2022. My name is Charlotte Wheeler. I'm the Director of Broadcast Tech and Sport Group. I'm also an advisory board member for RISE and a Screen Skills mentor this year. RISE had a really busy year in 2021, offering 2 mentoring programs to over 40 women, running their own education program online and at live events, being shortlisted and winning multiple awards, and delivering an incredible Rise Up program across multiple schools and UTCs in secondary education across the country. RISE has now firmly cemented its position as a leading group supporting gender diversity in the broadcast technology industry and at the forefront of educating the next generation of young people we want to recruit in the future. With all of that behind us and looking forward to a new year, we're kicking off our first event this year with the brilliant Inga Ruehl, who is our Executive Director of Production Services and Operations at Sky Sports. So welcome, Inga.
Thank you, Charlotte. Hello, everyone. And so nice to see some familiar names on here as well.
Mm-hmm. So starting off, Inga, we obviously must congratulate you again on your accolade, your award for Woman of the Year at the RISE Awards in November last year. Incredibly well deserved. How did it feel winning the award and having it voted for by your peers?
Well, to be completely honest, I was quite surprised how uncomfortable it makes me when the spotlight is on me in that way. So there was some of that. And then it was interesting because I just got a lot of really nice messages from people that made me go, okay, maybe I do not deserve it, but maybe it is a nice thing. And so yeah, so it was not really nice in that way. And I think what was also amazing was that at Sky, one of my colleagues is our group director for corporate affairs, and she's a woman. And I told her, I said, can we please not make a big thing about this? And she just made the biggest thing about it. So everyone knew. And I was really like, at the beginning, I was like, oh my God. And then I thought, well, I'm silly. This is a good thing, right? This is a really nice thing. And and it was amazing because, you know, talking about women, having another woman, really senior woman to support you like that was also incredible, and I was really grateful to her for that. Yeah. But I also felt a little bit that I hadn't done anything in particular. I haven't started a great scheme to help women or anything like that, so I felt a bit undeserving in that way.
Not undeserving at all, and if I was you, I'd make the most of it until the next RISE Awards, because you're Woman of the Year for at least another 11 months, so make the most of that, put it on your LinkedIn. Yes. Make the most of it. So let's start off. For those who are watching and joining us this morning, who maybe don't know you and don't know what you do, could you sort of just give us a lay of the land of your current job role and your career in broadcast, and how you got there?
Yes, okay. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. So my background is production management. When I started out, I was trying to work out, I wanted to do something that was fun and ideally something that was meaningful. I kind of went more the fun way, which is why I ended up in broadcasting. And that's still something where I sometimes go, not sure that was the right thing. But And then I had to decide whether I wanted to be more on the editorial side or behind the scenes, because I like organizing and I like bringing things together. And I like a bit of control. Production management was the right way. And then about 18 years ago, I came to the UK for initially also a production management job, but it was more like a channel management, production management job with ESPN. Most of my background has been in sports, but I have done a bit of other stuff as well. And I came over for 3 months contract because I'd always only freelanced. I'd never had a full-time job. But the idea of kind of like going into full-time job seemed really crazy to me at the time. I didn't have many obligations either financially, apart from just looking after myself. And then I ended up with this job at ESPN where I stayed for 10 years. I tried to leave at some stage to open a wine bar with my partner. And I handed my resignation because I really thought, okay, I'm going to do something completely different with my life. And then at ESPN, my job really exploded because we got the Premier League rights. And it was a really, I mean, sometimes it's just that timing thing, isn't it? Where you are at what time. And so I ended up staying. Hi, Jake. I just saw you popping up there, old colleague from ESPN. And so I ended up staying also, I think, because at the time I thought I do probably want to have kids, and it would be nice to be in a permanent role, not freelancing and not running a wine bar when you have kids. So I had my first child, and then I was pregnant with our second child when we found out that ESPN was kind of closing its channels and that I was going to be out of a job. So I thought I'd take some time off, I'd take the money that I was getting to pay for the mat leave. And then I was lucky enough that I knew some people in the industry and someone at Sky as well, who kind of went, oh, we know you're going to be out of a job. And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to tell them I'm pregnant and no one's going to give me a job. But Sky did the right thing and offered me the job anyway. And I thought a company that's that crazy has to be worth a try. And I think what's probably worth noting is that I think it's very circumstantial for everyone where you're at and what you do with the whole balancing of whatever it is that you're balancing, whether it's caring or hobbies or children or family. And in our case, I was earning more than my partner. So we decided that it would make more sense for him to take more time out than me. And then when I started Sky, I took 3 months out. And I have to admit, I know that the Americans do this really short maternity leave, but that was hard. That year was a really hard year because he was really struggling with the 2 ones at home. And then we did a big house renovation and I really thought I'm going to leave. And again, I think that was another thing where Sky really helped. So they gave me the job when I was pregnant. And then when I thought I'm going to leave, they kind of went, do you want to work a bit less? And I was like, well, that's impossible. Wow. I work so much. Yes. So it was a suggestion of, and I guess by that time I was in management, so I wasn't working shifts or event based, because that's, I think it's a really hard one, is when you're working on events, on productions. It's really hard to do more flexible because you have to work when the work's happening. And I tried that, and that made a massive difference. And I have to say that was a woman at Sky who was supposed to become my mentor. And I had my first session with her. She's our general counsel. She's amazing, and she's always worked part-time. And I said, I've written my resignation letter. I'm going to go because I can't do this. And she was like, have you thought about working less? And I was like, no, it's impossible. So that was quite a big point, because then I kind of thought, actually, if I can do it with a little bit less, I get paid less and I work less. And then I kind of had a few different jobs, and I've kind of adjusted depending on, I guess, what my life allowed and the job allowed, because I do think it has to work both sides.
What was your role when you first joined Sky?
I had a funny role. I was account director for sports and for news, working in the production services department. So looking after all the facilities so I guess like if you work for a production house or for a facilities house, and then just looking after the 2 biggest clients. And we went through a massive transformation program at the time, because it was an area that had grown and grown and grown. And because it was disconnected from the, I guess, content areas, there wasn't a lot of process, and there was quite a lot of inefficiencies and also bad behavior from both sides, probably. So we did a lot of work in trying to kind of balance that out. But I mean, Sky is an interesting place to work because it's very demanding and it's very high paced. So that also added to the first year being pretty full on. And it's a lot of it's based on relationships. And if you don't have the relationships, work's a lot harder. After a while, when you have the relationship, kind of, you know who to go to and what to do.
And
So
when
yeah,
did you start your current role? When did you?
So, and then it's been a bit of a, so I did the account director role, then I took over studios. I ran the studios department, which isn't the big original entertainment studios department that Sky now has, but basically our production studios on site. We have like 10 studios, 15 galleries, 300 people. And I thought, oh my God, this is a really big operational job with a lot of people. Am I going to be able to do it on 4 days a week? But I had a really great team and it was possible. And then from there, I then took over the overall production services, which included post-production as well. And then we moved into the sports department. So we kind of became part of our biggest client or production partner. And then that was then when I guess my proper new role started, which was, okay, well, we've got the production services, and then there's also the whole production management area and operations and how we do our Bs. And actually, there's so much overlap and there's so much close working relationships between those teams. If we bring them all together, that could be really beneficial. And that happened just pre-COVID, like a few months pre-COVID. And then it did really help us during COVID because we were like all together, and my team members who head up those teams are amazing. So they're all really, really good at their job, which makes my life a lot easier. But everyone has got their own, everyone has got also, I guess every team has got its own challenges. And sometimes it's just about how do you bring those together and how do you make it work as smoothly as possible between them. So I guess it's been 2.5 years in the current role.
Right. Okay. And that sort of leads me into my next question, which is, in terms of your teams, how many people are you currently managing within production services and operations?
The whole team is about, it's just over 500. But obviously, as I said, I've only got 5-6 direct reports. So they're kind of the people I really deal with on a day-to-day basis. And below that, there's a lot of teams. And I guess we engage a lot of freelancers or ad hoc freelancers. So I think a lot of what we do is very people-based because we need so many people to work on all the productions. Some of it happens through the outside broadcast companies that we work with. But a lot of it also happens directly through us. So, and it's always that balancing of how many people do you need staff, how many people do you need freelance, what makes sense.
Okay. And as we touched on, the last 2 years have been very difficult for all the obvious reasons. But how has your role as a manager, so you said you've got 5 or 6 sort of direct reports, and I mean that's feeding down into a lot of people, isn't it, as a team of 500? How has your role as a manager changed in terms of how you deal and what you've had to deal with from your direct reports during the pandemic?
I think as a manager or as a contributor, what's really changed in the last 2 years is it's brought your private life and your work life much closer together. On top of that, we've obviously all had to change, both professionally and personally, with a lot of change, often unexpected, often unwanted. So I think it's just kind of brought everything into one bucket. And some of that has been nice. So for example, in my personal circumstances, I truly wanted to have more time with my kids, and the pandemic gave me that, and I'm so grateful for that, to the extent that at the moment when there are other job opportunities, I'm a bit like, I'm so grateful for having this more time with my kids that I'm not that interested in doing anything else, because I can kind of balance it not for the first time, but I think it's that balance, getting it right. And I think quite a lot of people have found that they do have more time to spend at home. But I also think it's been obviously hard, because not only has personal life and work life more collided, but both of it has been harder. So I think there's been a lot more support required. And because it's merged, some of it just it's become more personal. And I think, again, it's an interesting one, though, because I think the remote working or the kind of not seeing each other in person has made certain things more transactional. So you have all these Teams meetings where you're very transactional, but actually the individuals need more individual support. All of us, I mean, like you, me, right? We all need that. And then I'll try to, with the people who work for us, make sure that we give them the support, and we know that they carry a lot of that because they have such large, so in my case, they have such large teams below them, so they have to carry a lot. So
I mean, that's you talk about the personal support, and know how busy you are already. How did you fit that in? When we talked earlier about you potentially become a therapist almost for staff, because they want support, they want someone to talk to, they want someone to share their anxieties over a project or a job, or is it going to happen, is it not going to happen, when's this all going to end? How did you sort of manage all of that and cope with that yourself?
I actually think most people want, I don't know if it's a therapist, but I do think most people want to be able to talk about the things that happens to them, whether it's a pandemic or not. I just think the pandemic has really accentuated it. So I think I try to, so under pressure, I go to transactional. That's definitely my default, like delivery transactional. But I've definitely learned over the years that the personal and the people side of things is so important. It is at least half the rent, if not more. So I think I always try to make time for that. I think what Sky has been really good at also for quite a long time is we've done a lot of management and leadership programs that really focus on looking after yourself. And the first course that I did, what actually made me go, I've got to quit this job. That was when I went to part-time, because I really thought I can't look after myself at the moment with the young kids and the job, and it's just crazy. And I'm really unhappy. And so I think there's always been a real emphasis, and that's interesting when you work for a company that truly goes, it's important that you exercise, that you meditate, that you do whatever it is, like time in nature, go for a run, or and if that's something that's really seen as important to look after yourself, to manage the stress levels, it does kind of change a click in your head as well. And I had to, so I think for me, it's been 4 or 5 years that I've got a pretty strict regime. I get up early in the morning. I always wanted to be that person that gets up early in the morning and does yoga. Took me only about 10 or 15 years to get there. but I do that now. And it has made the difference that when things are too tough, if you like, that regime really helps me to kind of have an hour that's my hour, that no kids, no work, no partner kind of interrupt.
So that's a great piece of advice, isn't it? Because I was going to ask you how you've, as a woman at the top with managers and 500 people in your care, as it were, how do you manage your own mental well-being and wellness? And Sky's a great leader in all of these, mental health, sustainability, etc. They're a great leader in producing programs. But so the yoga was one thing that you started doing. Is there any other advice to give to people on?
I think it's the same with my team. It's like you have to be okay. If you're not happy or okay, you're not bringing the best to work. You're not going to be the best. So it's actually it's for you and it's for work that you look after yourself first. I know that this is so much easier said than done, and there's always times when you kind of fall off the wagon and go, oh my god, it's been months since I've gotten up at 6 and did the yoga. But I think especially when things are really hard, it's actually even more important. I mean, there's this saying which I really don't subscribe to, but I do think it's true. It's that kind of thing about meditation. It's like everyone should meditate 20 minutes a day. Unless you're busy, then you should meditate an hour. And I'm just like, I mean, that just freaks me out completely. But I am definitely that person that should be doing an hour because I never find the time. But I guess, yeah, in the wider, I do think that looking after yourself is really important. I think the pandemic has made that more obvious to everyone, right? Because also a lot of the things that we used to do that kind of, I guess, gave us that we weren't able to do. So you had to find other things that give you a bit of a good feeling. And I think I was really lucky because for me, because I have a really busy job and a busy family life, my time was always me time, like by myself. Well, I think if I would have a quieter job and not a busy family life, I would have probably more relied on social activities, which would have been much harder to kind of find that engagement in the last years.
I heard an interesting terminology the other day, was that we are living at work. And, I was, like many people's issues, my desk is my dining table. And, you know, how do you cut off at sort of 5:30, 6 and go and put dinner on and then sort of pack up and come back and then sit at the same table and have dinner? It's sort of mentally being able to switch off. Are you able to switch off? Give yourself that space?
Yeah, I think I'm quite good at focusing on what I'm doing. So when I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. And sometimes people don't like that much. My partner sometimes says, when you're not with us, you don't really think about us. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's not good. But I have to and have had for a long time work quite flexibly. So I don't really have the 9 to 5. I kind of work when I can. But then I also want to make sure that that doesn't affect people badly and they think, oh my God, she's sending me emails like she expects emails back. So I think that awareness of, and I think this is again something that I think managers can really do, is be aware that your people are probably like, they're getting an email from you, so they think that you expect answers, and everyone is exactly working at their dinner table. So yeah, I have to say I haven't found the switch off as hard, but I know a lot of my colleagues have found it really hard. I think it's because, so I'm German, so I'm quite structured in my way, which one of the things I like in this country, it's not quite so square. But sometimes when things require, like when you're going, actually, if I just do it like that, that's going to be easy. So.
Definitely. Well, just before I move on to the next question, if you have any burning questions or advice you'd like to ask Inga, you can put them in the chat, and we'll get to have a look at a couple at the end if anybody wants to ask anything. Moving on to sort of technology and the world that you work in. And production, content delivery, obviously sports closing down in the pandemic was very difficult for everybody, but it actually did remote production, really, everyone was thinking, oh, that's going to be another 5 years away, but within a year, remote production really took off and came into its own during the pandemic. For many broadcasters like yourselves. So what technological advancements have you made within your operations team that's made it easier to manage and deliver content to your audiences?
Well, remote production is clearly the biggest one that's made the biggest change, especially in sports. We've been on that journey for like 5 or 6 years already. And pre-COVID, we started delivering all of our EFL football. So the whole match coverage remotely, which really helped us because it meant we had ironed out a lot of the workflow issues and a lot of the, because there's the technology, then there's workflow, and then there is actually the skill set and the people, how they're operating and how it's really changed, because we became more and more of a production hub, like a live production hub in Osterley, rather than a studio wraparound hub. And I guess because we had done that pre-pandemic, we were lucky because we had always planned, like we had planned to take all of our sports that way, but we had like a 3-year plan, which we then fast-tracked into 6 months.
Right.
So that
a 3-year plan into 6 months.
Overall, it was a 5-year plan, and I think we were kind of like in our first year, and then we just went, okay, we have to take Premier League now, which was the biggest one. So take Premier League remote 2 years before we planned to do it, and then cricket following that. And I think we were really lucky because we had really, James Clement, who's our director of operations, he'd been working on this plan for a long time, and he'd really made sure that all the building blocks were there. And actually, I think a lot of our technology, and I'm sure it was the same for everyone, we kind of been tinkering. I think in remote, we were way more ahead than tinkering because we've done the EFL and we do F1, all the presentation. We've been doing that for years remotely. But we had been tinkering with remote editing. So that was a big one. Our post-production team, which is about 100 people, that kind of seriously went from everyone on site to everyone apart from high-end audio off-site. Wow. And that was crazy because we knew we could do it before, but the clients weren't interested, and is it really going to be? That was a big one. And then I think the other thing was virtual production. So we worked with vMix in particular, kind of to have a proper virtual gallery and be able to make all this kind of content that was being filmed at home come together a bit better than just what you saw on a lot of the channels. It was just so bad. And then again, and I think our tech teams had a real field days. They were just like, this is great. We can finally do all the stuff that we knew we could do, which normally the production teams or the content teams are like, oh, well, this is going to take a while. And also all the crews, like, how do you get the skill set to the right level? So it was a really fast track, but it wasn't necessarily new. It was like stuff that was already in the making. And I think therefore for us also at the moment, we're definitely like everyone, and I've had the conversation with colleagues in the industry. It's like, I think everyone's a bit like, we have to just slow it down a bit because it's not as stable as we'd like it to be at the moment. So we haven't caught up with skill sets, we haven't caught up with processes, the technology is kind of, tech is actually probably the least of the problems by now, but it's the people and everything around it, because we just went so fast.
Yeah. And do you see I mean, you're talking about going so fast, so you need to rein it in a little bit, but do you think that this is how you're going to work moving forward? There's no sort of going back?
No, I can't really see anyone going back on anything, to be honest, because I mean, remote, that was our plan anyway. We just went faster. Virtual, obviously, that was, I mean, mainly for when we couldn't bring people on sites and we had to have talent at home, etc. But we have since then been playing with actually doing virtual proper sports productions. We've had a virtual gallery for COP26 for the Sky News channel. We had a pop-up channel. That was quite exciting, but it's probably not there yet for the high-end tier sports. And editing, so we now know, for example, in post-production, we know we can work from home, which obviously opens up a whole new talent pool and opens up as well opportunities for people to work from home and balance work-life a bit better. But we're bringing some of it back in, dependent on what the production requires.
And is there any sort of future tech? I mean, we touched on virtual studios, virtual production. That seems to be quite high on the agenda with a lot of people coming into this year. Is there any sort of future tech that you and your teams are desperate for, or want just think, wow, that would really make a difference?
So I think from a production operation, so behind the scenes, off screen, I actually think we've kind of at the moment more in the let's stabilize, let's make it work, let's really let's catch up with all the bits that we want to catch up with. So we're probably not proactively looking for too much. But as I just mentioned, we are playing around with virtual. I think a lot of the focus is on screen at the moment, because that hasn't been. And it's kind of like, well, how can we bring it closer to the fan? What are the things how can we make it fresh? So I think there's more focus, which is working then with creative and with the editorial teams, rather than it being driven purely by what can technology allow. It's more like, well, what does the fan actually want? So I think there's quite a bit of focus of on-screen innovation at the moment.
And talking about remote production, other benefits of remote production, as you said, mean people can work from home. Do you think this is going to open up opportunities? I mean, you know, you talked about when you were pregnant both times and it was very stressful, you were having to go in, do your job, and your partner was at home with young children, and the whole balancing act. I mean, I agree with you. It's not something I shout about, but I'm very grateful for having more time with my children. But it's remote production surely opens the door for women who have been on maybe a maternity hiatus or didn't think this industry was for them, but now remote production means they can come back to the industry because it's more flexible.
Yeah, I think hybrid. So I think there's two different bits. There's the more hybrid working and people working from home rather than having to be in the office for office type jobs. I think that absolutely is a game changer for any kind of family, I guess, environment. I've also had the feedback from actually men in my team that they really appreciate seeing their kids more, which is really nice. And I always think we actually really should be shouting about that. And I really want the men to shout about it as well, because so it balances a bit. I think from a remote production perspective, obviously, if you have big events where you need to be traveling around the world, and now you don't have to travel around the world, that's amazing. A lot of what we do is obviously football and based in the UK, so the travel isn't as big. I think one of the challenges there still is if you're trying to balance family life and you're working on events, you kind of have to work when the events are. So there's still, I think, as an operator or contributor on productions, that is, I think production is quite unforgiving in that way. But I think all the support roles, the management roles, you can do a lot more from home. And I guess even on the productions, if you don't have to travel to New Zealand or Tokyo or wherever anymore, because you can do it from here, that is obviously helpful. I think what's been interesting with remote though is as well that obviously, I mean, I remember I went into production because I wanted to travel. I didn't want to sit somewhere back in Austerlitz. So we do also get that, is that actually it's not as glamorous or as fun or as amazing anymore as when you used to go to the events. Also, the pressure is pretty full on because you have more of a line. There's more things that can go wrong. So it has a bit of both. I think the one thing that I also think is worth mentioning on remote though is the sustainability factor. I mean, I think on some of our OBs, we've managed to reduce our carbon footprint by 60-70% through to from where we started when there was no remote, and that's amazing, I think. But yeah, it comes all it's like with life, right? Nothing comes for nothing.
Yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages, but obviously, you know, when you look to recruit in the coming years, if women apply and they've been on a maternity hiatus and they're happy to come into the office or work from home, but maybe not have to travel, that there's careers there, which I think is fantastic news, because we need to know that those careers are there in this industry, and even for young people as well. You know, they want to know that there's careers. Not everybody wants to travel.
No, that is true. And I think it's what's also really important. I've definitely, and I've been on a journey with that myself, is that kind of whole thing around, you know, there's been a lot of emphasis on more women in leadership and all of that stuff, where you go, oh, is it just kind of like box ticking? Is it just, but actually it does make such a difference when you change the, I guess, makeup of your organization. It truly does. And I kind of, there was definitely moments when I thought, oh my God, am I going to be the token woman here now? This doesn't feel so good. And then really quickly I realized that actually having a woman there made people have to kind of think about things differently or again, etc. So I think therefore it is also so important that women continue working in this industry, and that people kind of do what they can to support women to be there, and that sometimes it might feel harder, but it's worth it for, I think, for the companies to make the effort.
Absolutely, which beautifully segues, thank you, Inga, into my penultimate question to you. Was, as a senior female leader, you know, one of the biggest broadcasters in the UK, many people will be looking to you for advice, key points, takeaways on your career as a female in this industry, or how can you progress in current roles. So what advice, thinking about the journey that you've been through, what advice would you give to people, or singular words that you might use to encourage people to stay in this industry? We have quite a big issue in a number of sectors where a lot of the time in audio, in post, grading, etc., where there's just not enough female representation and talent there. So how can we keep people in this? How can we keep people in this industry, and how can we encourage people to stay?
So there are two different questions, I think. How can we keep people and encourage people to stay? So I think we have to think about, what do the people need? And I guess our society is still in the way that often when it comes to women, especially when you come to a certain age and you might end up having children in your family, the woman is the person who takes the biggest, I guess, role in the child raising side. So I think unless society changes there, we need to acknowledge that that's the way it is. And then I guess as a woman, we need to work out, well, if I want to work an ad hoc roster on events, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, how am I going to organize my childcare around it? So, but the one thing I would say is on that one is that anything companies can do, they should be doing, but there's also the acknowledgement of the job needs to be done. So I think as a woman, to work out, is it the right job for what I want to, how do I balance this? So in my case, it was the a wine bar, that's probably not very secure. Or as a production manager traveling, having kids would have been really hard. While because I'm in a more Monday to Friday management position, it's a lot easier and I have a partner who really helped and helps,
Yeah,
does a lot.
yeah.
But
I think senior managers need to look to remove barriers to retain talent. Is potentially, like you're saying about juggling home life, home care.
where
Senior
they
managers
can,
within-
and I think the pandemic will have really helped with it, because I think before that there was a lot around the working from home, are they really going to do the work? And I think we've really seen, I mean, we've delivered, at Sky, there's evidence that we've delivered more during the pandemic than ever before. So you just go, actually, and I always believe if people want to work, they're going to work whether they're at home or in the office. And if they don't want to work, they're not going to work in the office either. They're going to find ways of kind of, it's like, it's so I think that that's really helped, and that should help with a balance, because if people can work more from home and you can do the drop-offs of the kids and the pickups of the kids, that's like half your rent sometimes, right? And I think from a woman, so I was kind of trying to work out what were the big things that made difference for me, or things that I think helped me. Was one of them, my dad said to me ages and ages ago, and he was just like, you don't just think about what you do at your job, but you think about the people around you and the relationships, because they're all just people. And this isn't politics or anything, but it's like, you'd be really stupid to not think about their dependencies. What do they like? What do they not like? What do they need? And then you kind of really fold that in. And I think we talk about it sometimes as networking, but I think networking is sometimes very abstract, while actually it's just about, I guess, taking into account that we are all people and we have dependencies and needs. And so, and sometimes it's about, do I know, have I ever even heard of this person? Have I had a coffee with them or not? So I think that what falls under networking, but actually is probably more about, I guess, taking into account. And I think women are really good at that when we take it into account, because we are kind of, I guess, socially and even, I think, biologically wired for connection, right? So I think that can be a real strength for women, to really think about people more rather than just jobs and roles. And I think that obviously becomes more the more you go into the management route, because your job becomes less about being an individual contributor, but more about making things come together. And the other thing was something from a senior woman at Sky, actually. She said that when she does presentations or big meetings, she was like, I know you all think that I can just do it like that, but I get nervous and I really prepare and I allow myself to prepare. And for me, that was a real game changer, because before that I thought I should just be able to do this, but there are things that I get more nervous about, maybe than men, or maybe just the same, but I don't know. I kind of, there was definitely even, and sometimes it's not the big presentations, but it is like a big meeting that's maybe with more senior people than you're used to. And so now I really allow myself to take the time to really prepare for it, because I know it's very important to speak up so people can hear you. And I think that's one of the things on both networking and on that, is like, if people don't hear from you, they don't know anything about you. So it's not about putting yourself into the front, but it's about making sure that, and when you're a manager, it's your job to do that for your team, because you're basically creating currency for the people in your team, and that's your job. But I think about it in that way. It's like, actually, it's really important that people know who you are and what you're about, because then I just don't think that comes as natural to women, whether that's because of how we're set up as a society or not. But I think it's important to be aware of that, and then play with that or use that.
Yeah, there's that old saying, isn't there, that some people say female leaders, or there's a meme or something, where the woman is being bossy, but the man is leading, but actually we're both doing the same thing. It's just the perception that the woman is bossy. But I think a lot of the time we've found our voice, so we're just expressing our opinion, and actually this is how I want it done.
Yeah,
this is how you need to do it. But that's also about building respect. You've got a lot of people underneath you that massively respect you. And I know, just my last question, there's a question in the chat. But my last question, you were just talking about finding your voice, and I know we've been talking. We met really during the pandemic and starting having chats, and I know you're one very much to, oh no, not me, oh no, I don't want to, oh no,
Well,
really. And I'm like, yes, you will be. So your visibility, you've challenged yourself to be more visible outside of your Sky comfort zone.
Yeah.
And
Actually, that is probably the next one, is to kind of do things that you're uncomfortable with. I think I want to say on this one, especially as there's people on this call who know me, I'm not really shy on retiring, and I'm quite happy to say what I think and all of that. It's just what I've definitely noticed, and with you, Charlotte, it was when we did that interview and then winning the award, that when the focus is on me as a person, I really go, oh my God, this is like very, very uncomfortable. I was really surprised about that, because I am normally quite forward, and I've definitely been called bossy many times from when I was a child. Now I just go, actually, that's a good thing, right?
It is a good thing, because you've got your voice. But I think, your visibility by doing interviews with us at Broadcast and Rise and the awards. So how would you encourage other people to find their visibility, to share their voice? Because, as you say, I know you mentioned about preparation, but it's nerve-wracking. It is nerve-wracking. How have you felt about what you've done to be more visible?
So I think I started it with presentations, because I also get really nervous if I have to speak in front of a lot of people. But I felt that was something that I really wanted to be able to do. And I also thought it's actually a privilege if you can do it. And Sky also really forced me to do it. And I just kind of thought, like, I guess in general, personal growth is a really good thing, right? So, and you have the most personal growth, the more uncomfortable you are. So to kind of just put yourself out there, and even if you do it once or twice a year, where you just go, I'm proactively doing something that's outside of my comfort zone, and work through it. And I will give myself as much prep as I need to be as comfortable as I can be, but I'll still be uncomfortable. And I still get really like, if I have to speak in front of a lot of people, but I definitely, it's a bit easier now than it was a few years ago. And
well,
I think
good.
I was more aware that that's an important thing to do than to do things like interviews, because they felt more like self-promotion. They still feel a little bit more like that. So
no, I know, if you flip it on your head, or flip it on its head, I should say, that what you're saying is educational, what you're sharing is useful and interesting to other people. And that's why, I always want you to speak and share your thoughts. And I'm glad to hear that you're more comfortable, because obviously in May I'll have you on a big stage in front of hundreds of people. There we go. You can prep for that one. So just before we go, there's one question on the chat. I would like to ask about women returners. Does she experience such a promotion for women? Oh, hang on a minute. Such a promotion for women as hiring manager or as a employee? Whoever wrote that one, would you mind dropping me a couple of points on that? Because I'm not entirely sure. There's another one coming from Linda. We'll return to that one in a minute. The pandemic has forced us all to think in new ways to succeed. Are there any insights you can share on what you've learned about your own resilience and adaptability? Thank you, Linda.
Hi, Linda. I know Linda. It's nice to see you, Linda. Linda's helped me in the past. Are there any insights you can share? I'm trying to work out if there's new ways. I think I've definitely noticed how important it is to see people in person, and not just on screen, although it is lovely to see them on screen. Thank you for turning on your screen. And I think especially with how teams work together, I found that's been one of the most challenging things, is getting colleagues to truly work together, because obviously some people like each other more than others, and that's easier when you're in person together. And I think I didn't quite realize how important that is. And the same for me, that I really enjoy seeing people, that I get a lot of energy of people in person, and that actually working from home, that's a challenge. So I think it's that balance of going, okay, actually there's been something that's been great of being able to work remotely, but there's also things that have been lost. And I guess I'm really hoping that with a hybrid way of working, we can kind of get a bit of both. This is again, obviously more on where you can flexibly work than if you work on events where you have to be on site.
Do you think you've learned more about individuals though, being online, than you would have had time or opportunity when you're in the office?
I'm laughing because I think you've kind of get to see what's going on in everyone's lives, and there's like the cats.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And and that's been really funny. Or the Amazon driver, or one of my colleagues said, it's been great. I've seen all the women without makeup. I have to say, so I've got COVID at the moment. So this morning I was like, there's no way I'm going on this call without makeup. So I think we've learned more about it in that way, and because it's all been more intertwined, and we've had to talk more about each other. But I also think that's kind of that chemistry that only happens when you see each other in person. That's really been missing.
Definitely. Well, it looks like we're going to wrap up now on the chat, and I just want to say a massive thank you to Inga for joining us, and it's been brilliant to talk to you today and hear about your career, your advice, and your visibility, and how you've got much more plans for visibility. That's brilliant. Thank you everyone for joining today, and hope you all have a good rest of the week. Thank you, Inga.
Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time. I feel quite humbled that you actually come and hear me talk.
Thanks,
Thank
Inga.
you, everyone.